First of all, thank you to the Paley Center for having us all here and inviting me to speak. I've been to a number of events here. This is actually the first political event I've enjoyed here, but I guess politics and media are rapidly converging, so it's probably fitting. I won't talk for long because we have three amazing entrepreneurs who will talk about their three amazing projects in a moment. A quick introduction about Brigade. Luckily, Brigade has been called the Tinder for politics, which is awesome news. And I'll reach out when we're raising our next round. You might want to investigate. But Brigade is trying to build a consumer-facing platform for politics, which is where I think it got the name from. Essentially, what we're looking to do is connect citizens around shared values and then build technology that makes it easy for them to take collective action, not only in and around elections, but also around the policies and pieces of legislation that affect their lives. We're only a few months old now. We've rolled out a couple of tools. The first tool made it easy to express yourself and compare your opinions with friends. We then rolled out a voter verification tool. Really excitingly, we're also rolling out our third tool next week. It's going to be around elections, which is great. So keep an eye out for that, and I'd encourage you to check it out when it comes out. First person I'd like to introduce is Kareem Amin. Kareem is with the NYC Media Lab, and he's going to present lenses, which is awesome. Kareem previously worked at News Corp and the Wall Street Journal. This concept was a prototype fund winner, and it's going to help journalists use data to build interactive election stories through an open source, mobile-friendly tool. So I'll let you say a few words, Kareem.
Thanks. My name's Kareem. I used to be the VP of Product at News Corp and head of mobile. And I'd like to talk to you today about lenses. Can we put it up there? Yeah. So lenses came out of a few insights I had watching graphics journalists create stories at the Wall Street Journal. And what it is an open source toolkit that allows you to create these visualizations from online data sources really quickly without needing to know how to program and without needing to maintain these things that you create. So there are three big ideas, and I'll show them to you in a quick live demo. The first thing is that it's accessible to beginners, so you don't need to know how to program. But as you learn more skills, you're able to create more custom graphics, which is some of the things that limit existing tools that allow you only to create graphics from templates. The second thing is that it's extendable by anyone that knows how to program. And each time someone creates a new component to be used in this toolkit, it becomes available to everybody else. And so as more people use it and as more people create these components, you're able to do more things with it. And finally, each single graphic that's created with this tool will keep a history of how it was created, so it shows you the data provenance, how the data that someone is trying to represent was manipulated, and it allows other people to learn how to create these charts. So I'll show you a quick demo now of how this tool works. So here it is. This is what the tool looks like today at its prototype stage. So it's just an example to show how these ideas can work in action. And what I'm going to do is take a simple table from the Wall Street Journal about how home prices are changing. And I'll put the areas that are being represented in that table onto a map. So the first thing is to add a step. In this step, I'm going to add a table for the data. And I'm going to switch to here and copy this header. And just paste it here. Just one second. And so what you do with this usually is that you need to be able to have a data source. In this case, it's just a simple table, but you can also you can use different APIs to put the data in. And using these different APIs, you're able to access data that only programmers would be able to use. So here I'm just reformatting it. And then once you have this data in the table, you can add a second step. And since I want to show it on a map, I can use another component that's been created in the system. And what it does is it allows me to see geocodes. Let's switch to the second one here. And so what this does is it takes every single location that's in this table, and it gives me the latitude and longitude for that location. And then finally, you can add another step to visualize it. And here, this is a Google map showing the locations that are in that table. So it allows me to create this visualization very quickly. And once you do that, you can save it. And this is what it looks like when it's saved. So this is just a link that you can embed anywhere on any web page. But what's nice is that you can click, I think the application's down, that's why. Once you click on View Lens, you would just simply go back to the page to see how it was created. So what's the final kind of point that brings all of this together is that when you are able to see how a graphic's produced and you're able to see all the places that someone has manipulated the data, you can start to trust people who are creating these graphics that are outside of big brands like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. So it opens it up to citizen journalists and other people who are interested in participating in the democratic process to use some of these data sets that are being open and made available and share that information with others. And so that's what we're hoping to do with a hackathon that we're holding in a few months. We'll be inviting developers to create more of these components and using them to tell stories about what's happening in the upcoming election. That's it for me. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. First, that was, you did it live. That was great. Yeah. Scared me. That was good. But thank you, that was awesome. Now we get to hear from Woody Beale. Woody is the Executive Director of the Youth Outreach Adolescent Community Awareness Program in Philadelphia. He's going to present Sharp Insight. Actually, we were talking about it earlier. It's such a cool idea. He was a Night Project winner, and what he hopes to do is engage more black voters through their barbers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Duerward Beale, but everybody calls me Woody for short. I am the Executive Director of UACAP in Philadelphia, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Sharp Insight, but I first want to give you some insight about myself. I used to be in a rap group called 3 Times Dope. We were signed to Arista Records that was right on 6 West 57th Street here in New York, and we traveled around the country to do a lot of tours. We had people that were our label mates like Whitney Houston, Grateful Dead, Kenny G, Aretha Franklin, and we were one of the rap groups that were on Arista. We had a chance to tour with Public Enemy, Heavy D and the Boys, Guy, MC Hammer, NWA, and we also worked a lot with Rock the Vote, Black Youth Vote, and Youth Vote 2000 in their elections. But to give you some more of my background, I have to tell you, I thought about this project, Sharp Insight, and you know, I go to the barbershop at least 2 or 3 times a month. I like to keep my hair cut, look nice, and I was thinking this would be a great place since we've done voter registration in barbershops, before. Why not take it a step further? Sharp Insight is really about talking to barbers and getting them to be trained to be disseminators of information, nonpartisan information to their customers while they're already talking. We go into the barbershops, we talk about everything. We talk about relationships, we talk about family, sports, empire, what's on TV. Why not continue the conversation and talk in a factual way about elections and getting out to vote and participating civically? The idea came from that. I think the importance of it is that we have to first train barbers. We have to spend some time really training them. We have to go into the barbershops and we have to collect information from the people in the barbershops, from the men themselves, to see why they don't actually vote and why they don't participate in their community. We're going to use this information and collect it on telephones using an application that John Gosier, a part of our team, is actually making up. It's very important to collect information to understand the problem first. Then we're going to go back, and then we're going to have an outreach team that's going to work with the barbers until they're fully trained to actually talk to the men in the barbershops. We're going to use that data to develop educational tools that will be given out. So it's a little process to what we're trying to do, but it's driven from the data that we're going to collect initially. I want to talk to you just briefly about our project team. We are also partnered with iHeart Media, and they're a part of our promotional team, but we also have people that are very strong with data collection, data analysis, evaluation, voter engagement, community outreach. So we have a very strong team, marketing, social media. So we're going to use a lot of mass texting to get messages out to men, which is very important for us. Social media as well. Our belief is that we're going to change some of the misinformation that's going on in the barbershops. We call it street science. Sometimes things are factual, some things are not factual. So we're going to make it be more factual and help the barbers so that they can give out good information to their customers. We believe that through this project, we're going to reach about 6,000 men directly. And through social media, them dealing with their social networks, they're going to reach upwards, their family and friends, they're going to reach upwards of 90 to 100,000 people through our project. Like I said, mass texting, social media, and things like that. So our project ourselves, we think is innovative, but it's sort of kind of basic. So a lot of people really don't really get it, but we think it's a good start to what we already built as far as voter registration. We're just taking it a step further, and we think the barbers can help sustain this project over a period of time. So I want to leave you with my information. Please contact me anyway if you want to help us, give us some information, or just learn about our project as we go through the different stages. We're currently working with our copywriter, so to develop our messages. Again, it's going to come a lot from the data. So again, please check in with me. Here's my email and my telephone, and I thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wood. 2-3 times a month. That's fantastic. Okay. And finally, I'm thrilled to invite Kathryn to the stage. Kathryn is the founder of Democracy Works and TurboVote. TurboVote's an awesome organization, actually. Brigade and TurboVote just announced a partnership last week with Dominican University out in California. Kathryn's going to showcase a project called Informed Voting from Start to Finish, which is another Night News Challenge winner, and it seeks to simplify and provide easier access to voter registration. The floor is yours.
The final presentation of the night. I feel like everyone's attention might be waning. Since we're at the Paley Center for Media, I'm looking for some appropriate analogies. As you've seen tonight, the political and civic tech communities are exploding with good ideas and new initiatives. I'm getting to introduce actually something of a supergroup of a few older actors in the space. No, we're not, unfortunately for you, the Justice League, nor do we get to be the Planeteers. We simply call ourselves Informed Voting, actually. But personally, I like to think of us as the Care Bears of American democracy. I'll start by introducing myself. Since 2010, Democracy Works has sought to make voting fit the way we live. Because the process is outdated, it's confusing, it's unnecessarily complex, and that means that fewer people participate. And our democracy suffers for that. After every federal election, the Census Bureau polls non-voters, and what we hear time and time again is that the process gets in the way. People miss voter registration deadlines, or they move and don't get their address updated in time, or a trip comes up and they don't know how to request an absentee ballot at the last minute. In order to simplify that process, we built TurboVote, a site that tracks elections and sends timely, simple notifications via text and email. We'll help you know when elections are happening. We'll get you registered to vote. We'll help you keep your voter registration current as you move. We'll help you request absentee ballots, find your polling place, and much more. And if you're one of those people who no longer owns a printer, we'll send you the paperwork with a stamped, addressed envelope. Through building this, I became a huge fan of the Center for Civic Design, who in 2012 published a series of field guides to ensuring voter intent. Through their interviews with voters seeking information online, they defined 5 top questions that people ask about elections. How do I register to vote? How do I get an absentee ballot? And when is it due? Where do I go to vote? What is going to be on my ballot? And who represents me anyway? I remember reading that list and saying, well, okay, we help with maybe 3 or 3.5 of those questions. How do we help with all of them? Conducting my own user tests, I've heard time and time again that voters want more and more detailed candidate information. We were already taking part in the Voting Information Project to collect and publish lists of candidates and offices up for election, but we wanted to help voters dive deeper into what those choices meant. Enter E! The People. They work with hundreds of newspapers, media groups, civic organizations across the country to build voter guides. Those organizations can pose questions, build comparison profiles for candidates and issues, and help voters get to know their choices in much greater detail. It's even possible, after walking through your own sample ballot, to send a copy to your phone or print it out to take with you to the polls. Their work was exactly the missing link that we needed. And so through the Night News Challenge, we joined forces with E! The People and the Center for Civic Design to integrate our services and test them with voters, to build, as you will, a Care Bear stare for American democracy. That collaboration is bringing together a phenomenal quantity of data, election dates and jurisdictions, the locations of every polling place in the United States, the rules and deadlines for voting, whether by mail, early, or for you traditionalists, at the polls on Election Day, plus an in-depth look at the candidates and issues and the choices at stake. It also brings together a much larger network than simply our 3 organizations. E! The People guides are often built by the League of Women Voters, or the Dallas Morning News, St. Louis's Post-Dispatch, or local media nationwide. TurboVote is integrated into student engagement on more than 130 colleges across the country, from Miami-Dade College to Harvard. And as the user experience experts of the elections technology community, the Center for Civic Design will be able to broadcast what we learn and help other voter information tools be smarter and easier to use as well. With Knight's help, we've formed an election supergroup committed to offering a one-stop voting service. Democracy at your fingertips with no question left unanswered. Doesn't that make you feel warm, fuzzy, and civic inside? Thank you.
So we can talk about a lot. I was thinking something that might be interesting for us to discuss is, you know, when we think about all of you and how you kind of fit into the you know, look at your companies through the lens of technology and startups and growing companies, I was trying to piece together what you all have in common. And how could we create kind of a thread that could run through each of your companies? We could have a discussion about sort of single issues. It was pretty difficult to do, it turns out, because you all have different missions, you're at different stages and have different challenges. But I think I've managed, which is great. So the thing that I actually wanted to start with, which I think is so important anytime I think about companies and where they are in their life cycle, I think it comes down to the founders and their stories. And Woody, I think you gave a really good insight into how you came to Sharp Insight. Would you guys be able to take 30 seconds and just tell your stories of individually how you arrived at where you arrived at and what made you decide to embark on these projects?
Sure. So Lenses is really, it's not a company as much as it is an open source set of tools. And the reason that this emerged was really, comes from the fact that I'm a developer who was working at the Wall Street Journal, traditional print company that's changing into the digital landscape, but also that I was working at a pretty high level in product development. And one of the things that I thought was unique about this was being able to marry, a specific set of problems that I noticed were happening in how journalists were creating these graphics with a developer mindset. And so it's the marriage of how do we make tools for other people to create this instead of bringing in more people to create more of these graphics for us. So I think that's really, the birth story of this tool.
Just follow up, and when you embarked on it, did you immediately think of this as a tool that had relevance for elections, or did that come afterwards?
I think that came afterwards. It was mostly because we're coming up to the elections and because there's a lot of data that's being made open, but really not actionable, right? So if you go to data.gov, I was talking to a couple of people at the Brown Institute at Columbia, and they were lamenting the fact that a lot of these data sets have 20 views, 100 views. Yeah. They're too complicated to use, and the only people that can use a lot of these data sets have programming knowledge. And a lot of the developers don't want to do one-off things. Developers like to create platforms. And so what this is a way to encapsulate the work of any individual into a component that can then be reused by a large group of people.
Great.
I actually wanted to go be a diplomat. I was interested in how we promote democracy internationally. I'd been watching elections in Morocco. I actually spent a summer with the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission working on elections, but was in graduate school and headed in that direction when Seth Flaxman, my co-founder and stats classmate, came to me and said, I actually have this problem with American elections. I keep not knowing that they're happening back home where I'm registered while I'm off at school. Why can't there be better reminders? And my immediate response is that I'm from one of the best administered elections jurisdictions in the country. I was able to pull out an automated email from my county clerk, Wendy Noren of Boone County, Missouri, and said, well, this is what I get in the run-up to an election. What do you mean you don't? And once we dove into the research and looked at what the state of reminders and notifications and sort of navigational aids to get people through the voting process were, I was pretty convinced that I needed to take the kinds of services that I took for granted and make them nationally available. And so internationalism went by the wayside, and I came out of graduate school working on this.
All right, that's a great story. Well, cool. So the other thing that I think you each had in common, and is perhaps worth discussing for a moment, is information.
Yeah.
You know, most tech companies have, you know, at their core, an approach to information that differentiates them from an old industry, or they believe is a comparative advantage to other competitors. You all sort of looked at information in different ways. Woody, your view was that you know, information plays an important role in democracy, and you're looking at the way and the circumstances that it gets disseminated. Kareem, your view seemed to be more of information, the way that it can be digested or understood or contextualized or presented. There are opportunities there. And Kathryn, your view was that people just don't know anything about stuff. So they don't have the information. So I guess my question is, when we think about, it wasn't quite like that, when we think about the role that information plays in rejuvenating democracy,
Yep.
My question is, it seems to be necessary, but is it sufficient? And each of you have a different thesis on what type of information and how it can be presented. But I'm really interested in how you think about information, what else needs to be coupled with information to make it actionable and drive people to actually engage.
You know, I would start off by saying, I think sometimes when you work with people, you sort of kind of feel like you have the answers. With our project, we want to learn from the men what some of their challenges are about not being engaged as far as voting, specifically in our area, and why they don't participate into you know, projects in their community. And from that, we can learn from them and then create messages, you know, based off what we think would help them, and then deliver them in a way that makes sense to them. So, you know, for us, it's about understanding the challenge and then figuring out the ways that is best for them. So when we collect the data, we can figure out how to reach them, whether it's email, whether it's mass text, whether it's social media, whether it's, you know, whatever it is, and then use that in a way that makes sense. And that's sort of kind of our thought process.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that I've thought about this project is in the same way as blogging allowed more people to write, and it's not necessarily the case that each of the people that was able to write was able to, you know, participate. They didn't get a lot of followers that are reading the writing and affect a lot of people, but it gives you the ability to have a voice. And I think with people reading things on their phone or getting information, you know, if you're looking through your Facebook newsfeed and you see a graphic and it says, you know, pay has changed this much over time, being able to create that graphic is a similar kind of power for today. And being able to know where that information came from and to actually trust it despite it being not from a brand is really a new form of expression. And the more expression that you give to people, hopefully the more you can participate in the democracy.
I think it's about digestion and delivery. Election law is really complicated. It's law. It's state code. It is not meant for lay people to read, and yet and so as a result of that, we tend to think of elections as a process. It is a standard operating procedure. It's rooted in administrative sort of structures. And what we're trying to do is take all of that knowledge, digest it into English, take it out of legalese, understand the pieces needed, contextualize it, And then we're also thinking about timeliness, so that we're all used to push notifications. We're used to things being delivered to us instead of having to go seek them out. And so part one is make it understandable, and part two is bring it to people at the moment that they need it, and not a moment before, not a moment later, and not making them go seek it out. Because sometimes not even knowing what to go looking for is part of the problem as well.
So if I hear correctly, there is an acknowledgement that people aren't necessarily looking for this information. But if you could find a way to get it to them at the right time in the right form, then that's the effectiveness of the product.
Yeah, one of the things that happens is that an election will be 5 weeks out and I'll plan a work trip.
Sure.
And it may not cross my mind yet that I'm going to be traveling on election day, I'm going to need an absentee ballot, and I need to go figure out how to get it. Whereas if I have an email that lands in that says, you have an election just far enough out that like you should figure out what your plan is for election day, that's potentially going to trigger me looking at my calendar and saying, oh, okay, this form is right here in my email right now. I'll get that printed. I'll get that sent in. So.
Just to add, sometimes on people's priority lists, elections aren't really important, in comparison to feeding their family, in comparison to things that are going on right now in their immediate life. So if we can continuously give them information and assist them in a way that makes sense, then I think the information becomes more important to them, especially if you can personalize it and make it relate to what's going on in their lives. Then I think they will participate more civically and vote more.
I think Google did a great study here where people do think about elections, especially with ads in around, but they often think about it a little too late. The deadline to register to vote in some states is as early as 29 and 30 days out from an election day. Even saturated with ads, people sometimes don't really form that intention to vote until a week out, at which point, if you need to update a voter registration or aren't registered, you're already lost in many states. And so I think they found it was a number in the millions, and I don't want to quote it, but millions of voters who were searching for voter registration information after the deadlines in the states where those queries were coming from, who Google expects would or could vote under a different regulatory system. So by bringing that to mind sooner, we can...
Yeah, but it's also exactly what you said. I mean, it's all about designing that process.
Exactly.
I mean, it's either designed by accident or through circumstance, or it's designed to be useful to people. And yeah, right now it seems like it's a bunch of laws that have come over a period of time. And what you're trying to do is design experience for, okay, this is when and how and what you should be doing.
What he said.
All right, well, good. We don't have as much time as the other panel, it turns out.
Okay.
Cool.
And they're pretty tight on time here at the Paley Center. So I have more questions, but before we do that, does anyone in the audience have anything they might like to ask? Yeah, great. Could you just hold on 1 second for the microphone, please? Thank you.
What you were saying on the end about, having this information, isn't there anything we could do? It's getting harder and harder. You're born in this country. You have a birth certificate, whatever. I mean, I think we should move to voter registration where if you can show up with, a passport, a social security card, a driver's license, anything that you would normally prove to get a job or fly on a plane, you should be able to vote right then and there. What you should be searching for is based on where you're located, where you can go and vote. And I think you should be able to vote on the spot if you have the right identification. That's what we should be moving toward. And you, men, shame on you. What about the women in the black community? And everyone knows that this is the vibe there. I mean, in today's day and age, this is, come on.
Yeah,
Everybody vote in our community. Anybody that can vote in our community.
No, that's a good point.
My God. No wonder no one's voting.
No. That's a good point.
Was there a question there?
What can we do to move,
Well, first, do you want to address women voters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The right ID, you're born in this country,
Well,
vote, period.
I can highly recommend the state of North Dakota to you. They actually do exactly that. They don't bother to keep a voter file. Actually, quite a few other states do have same-day voter registration, which works very similarly. You arrive with the necessary things, and you can get registered or update your registration on Election Day. Unfortunately, it's a matter of state law, state by state, and you'd have to go sort of address the legal concerns around that.
For what it's worth, originally I'm from Australia. A lot of people
You have
actually...
mandatory voting.
We do have mandatory voting, but we actually have the equivalent of the DMV, the IRS, and the voter file are all tied together. So you basically automatically...
What can we do to move
I'm endeavoring to answer the question. And I thought she answered it. She can answer more if you like.
She gave me
Oh.
that state does it. What can we move as a nation to have the whole country?
Whole country, not one state.
You'd have to go state by state and change election laws in them. They are run by the states. It's one of the pieces that we've left.
Start a campaign today on the street, get signatures.
Yep.
I think the
Same-day
Constitution
voter
needs to be
registration.
the answer.
Yep.
Yeah. Did
Well,
you have any
not
thoughts?
the Constitution. Elections are run by the states instead of the federal government, which is one of the fun parts of it. But yeah.
Any thoughts you'd like to share on your lack of...
No, I mean, I think our focus in Philadelphia with men just was basically because the turnout with men voters, particularly black voters, is very low. Partly because of their misunderstanding of being able to vote because of incarceration rates, and just having a lot of wrong information, and also having other priorities. So again, we're really trying to understand in Philadelphia why men vote less than their counterparts, particularly their white counterparts. And once we do that, then we can focus more on getting them out to vote and also participating more in their community. I think that's what our focus should be.
Great. We're almost at time. Oh, do we want to do one more? Okay, let's do one more question. Do we have time? Okay, and then you guys have one last thing to say, yeah. Sir, the microphone is coming. Ask away.
Thank you. A lot of really great ideas tonight, and a lot of things that I wasn't even aware of. I think many people weren't aware of. But it's interesting to me, you know, think about in terms of a tipping point. I don't even think we've come close to it. And maybe you do, but you know, what do you see the campaign in ideas like yours to seeing a headline on the evening news where some kind of technology and data-driven event made a big impact, you know, made the tipping point where the election changed because of what you're doing?
Is that a question for all of us?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Do you guys thoughts? Do you think, I mean...
I actually don't think there will ever be a headline.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do we think that's
in a significant
possible?
way about the work that we do. Maybe not as much you guys, but it's a lot easier to tell stories about the horse race. It's a lot easier to talk about the issues and the candidates and sort of the challenge of it. And so the process isn't necessarily ever going to get that kind of attention. I do expect that over time, TurboVote is actually only the first thing we've built. We're also working with local election officials to improve the tools that they have. We're working to simplify and improve access to a lot of other parts of the elections process above and beyond what I've talked about tonight. I think it will be a slow game, and I think it will go almost entirely unnoticed, but that little by little we're simply going to upgrade and modernize how elections are run. But I suspect if we hit the front page of the New York Times, it will be for the same reason that election administrators do, and that's usually that something has gone horrifically wrong. And if we're going right, you won't hear very much about us at all.
Ideally, technology fades into the background.
Yeah.
And you
It's
don't,
enabling.
and you don't notice, but you know, like in our case, if you see a graphic and you can click on that graphic and there's a button that's always there and you can see how that graphic was made and make another one or actually analyze and verify the truth of this, and that becomes something that you automatically know is available, that would be something that is success for this tool. But I think for all the other tools, it's when they fade into the background and let the issues actually rise.
Great answer.
I would just add one thing. You know, it seems like with our project, a lot of people are very interested in the project, and we've been getting a lot of questions and press around our project, which I'm thankful for the Knight Foundation for. I would say with us, hopefully we'll have the success that we can duplicate this. I think the process is doing a project, making it successful, and then showing other people how to duplicate it. And then we might get more traction and more, you know, word out about things like this on a ground level and using technology too. To me, that's how it seems to work, at least for our project.
Great. Are we at time? Okay, well actually what I might actually do, rather than get another question, the other thing that I thought, trying to connect the dots between all of your companies and projects, apologies, was that everybody needs help. I think that's one great thing about Silicon Valley, I think, is that people are always willing to ask for help and people are always willing to reach out with suggestions. So if you could all identify or ask for one thing or one piece of help, whether it's people watching or here in the crowd or other things, what's the one thing you're most focused on in the next 3 to 6 months and that people might be able to help you with?
I think with our project, we've been working with Kate and a few other people that have done some interesting work around evaluation of this type of project. So it's important for us to link up with those individuals who can help with the evaluation of the project so that we can show our impact. I think that's very important. Even though we have a team full of individuals, we're always looking for more support and people who really understand how to measure the success of this type of project. So for us, that's one of the things I think we're interested in.
Great. Kareem?
Yeah, we're definitely looking for more citizen journalists, so people who are, digging into data from data.gov, looking at the Sunlight Foundation data, people who use that information and want to create some of these visuals quickly, because we'd like to get the use cases right and make sure that we're building the right tool for them.
Okay, citizen journalists. All right.
We're always looking for communities that are interested in getting more civically engaged. I mentioned colleges and universities in the presentation, but we also work with a lot of 501c3 organizations and other sort of networks of people. We don't talk directly to voters. We build the tools so that others can. It turns out that when you ask someone how they got registered to vote, they often don't remember the means or even the mechanism, but they will usually tell you who registered them, whether it was a teacher at school, or a parent demanding it, or a canvasser out on the street. So that intermediate person willing to go connect to voters and pull them in and get them access to the kinds of technology I'm building is always the sort of middleman and the trusted community leader that I'm looking for.
Great. Communities, journalists, partners.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks, everyone.